It's been only a few days since Stellaris First Contact was announced, and now we have a dev diary diving deeper into the question, what on earth are we going to get with this new DLC? Developer Diary 283 is what we'll be looking at today, and the vision of First Contact. There is a whole lot to cover in this dev diary. We're going to be diving into the new origins further. We're going to be finding out a little more about why this specific topic was chosen for the DLC. We have some fantastic breadcrumbs that are sprinkled throughout this dev diary that may allow us to pierce the veil and try to uncover when the DLC will be released in terms of what date it's going to come out. And finally, we have some concrete photographs, concrete evidence of cloaking technology in Stellaris, and some discussion on what that will mean for us. So stay tuned for all of that and more as we dive in. This dev diary starts out really strong when it comes to new information for us. We open the gate here by finding out that the First Contact story pack, the next DLC we're going to be getting for Stellaris, will be arriving later this quarter, meaning it must be out by the end of March. It's also going to be coming alongside the free 3.7 Canis Minor update. Now, I believe, based on the other information we're going to get in this dev diary, that we are about 4, possibly 5 weeks away from release. I will explain exactly why later on when we get to those pertinent facts, but that is my bet right now. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. How long do you think it will be before we can get our hands on this new DLC? Next, the dev diary is going to go through the decisions made by the developers as to why they went with First Contact next. They were eager to expand the interactions players have with pre-FTL civilizations for quite a while. Some of the designs in First Contact date back to things they wanted to explore all the way back in Federations, Nemesis, and Overlord. After some careful consideration, they decided that they had a strong enough theme to expand into the core of a full story pack. The last few years have featured a handful of relatively dark expansions. Necroids, Nemesis, Overlord, and Toxoids all lean towards more authoritarian or dystopian themes. And while Aquatics was neutral, the devs felt it was time for a more positive, more utopian release. Which is definitely what we're going to get here with First Contact. Yep. It's been quite a while since our last story pack as well, or since their last story pack I should say, so this seemed like a great opportunity to unleash the might of their content designers. And now we must look to the stars and tell the heavens our story. The pre-FTL experience in Stellaris has generally not been a wonderful one. Utterly at the mercy of more advanced civilizations, they were eaten, enslaved, purged, and once in a while, peacefully integrated. When left to their own devices, they often destroyed themselves in a blaze of nuclear fire or met their end to asteroids. It really was a tough life. As with how one of the devs' goals with Overlord was to make vassalization more enjoyable as either an overlord or a subject, the devs wanted to make interactions with pre-FTL civilizations more interesting and more robust. There should be valuable reasons to consider observation and non-interference. But the devs also wanted to take the chance to make the interactions you do have with them more meaningful, and update them to utilize game systems that have been added over the years. So with all of that in mind, the pre-FTL civilizations will now progress through technological ages in order. With more ways to influence their progress, this now allows you to do things such as partially enlighten a civilization before choosing other approaches to deal with them. The devs have also introduced an awareness level that can affect things like how quickly the pre-FTL civilization advances and what kinds of interactions you as an observer can perform with them. Things occurring in a pre-FTL civilization system might now be noticed by them. I know how many people have been massively pulled out of the immersion when a pre-FTL civilization which was in space age simply didn't notice the fact that you owned their system, that you were flying around with a bunch of ships, that a massive space battle was going on, things like that. Well, now that will no longer be the case. Renaissance astronomers, for example, might find your observation post with their telescopes or observe a naval battle that occurred in the system. And even Bronze Age philosophers might comment that the fact that the moon just blew up might not have been a natural occurrence, though they admittedly probably won't correctly attribute it to the acts of an alien life form or life forms. Old events have been brought up to current standards, and some of the observation missions previously located on the observation post are now split between the diplomacy and espionage screens for the various overt or covert activities. Speaking of that, what we've been looking at the screen for all of this time is the new diplomacy/espionage menu that you'll get to interact with when you're now interacting with these pre-FTL civilizations. Breaking down what we're seeing on the screen here from roughly the middle, we can see the awareness bar. Now there looks like there are 5 levels, going from completely unaware, I'm going to speculate the other end is completely aware, and depending on where you are on that awareness level, you can or cannot do certain diplomatic actions. I think no matter the awareness level, you can definitely always do espionage actions. I think that one is going to be something you can always do, but the first step to undergoing diplomacy with a pre-FTL nation or set of nations will be to reveal your presence, as you can see on the right hand side. Additionally, I had suspected we were getting an extra age, an extra FTL age. That does not look to be the case. There is a tracker here on the very bottom which shows off early space age, and then there are 10 icons below it. Those 10 icons would correspond to the 10 different levels we have. Having said that, we may now get in the early space age more ships flying around the system. I could still be right on that count, even if wrong, that we are getting an extra FTL age between early space age and FTL. And if you're enjoying this video, please reveal your presence by pressing that like button. And if you were wondering, now you can absolutely perform first contact with a Stone Age primitive. This Stone Age civilization suffered a bit of stellar culture shock when the observers revealed their presence. And you can see we have some interesting things that we didn't look at before in the previous slide that I want to draw your attention to now. Not only do we have things like fragmented nation states or tribal society, we also have splintered species. What exactly splintered species means, I don't know yet. I'm assuming this is just a tag for a pre-FTL civilization, but it could mean we have multiple different species on a single planet. That would be very, very interesting if it were the case. Something else the devs have done in this pre-FTL rework is they have added some incentives for keeping these civilizations around and preventing them from being culturally contaminated by more advanced civilizations. While the spacefaring civilizations generally agree on some things, like the basic laws of physics and the existence of the number 0, sometimes the path not taken can reveal unexpected results. There is some fantastic short story work that I've read about specifically the path not taken, or the road not taken, I want to say, where aliens land on Earth and they have 18th century muskets. They think themselves very advanced, and it's simply because the humans never understood or never learned anti-gravity technology and thus FTL technology. And that's a really interesting short story. I'd recommend you go check it out. I honestly can't remember the name now. If you do, write it in the comments below. But that kind of idea is something we're going to get here. Some vastly advanced technologies, I would assume, from humble pre-FTL primitives. These icons do look to be a physics, society, and engineering technology. I assume maybe it's only one, possibly we're going to get two, but we're looking like we're getting something to do with physics. Well, it is definitely physics on the left there, but I'm not entirely sure. It looks like something possibly mathematical. The middle one is definitely about communication. Maybe it allows us to get more envoys or something to do with our diplomatic weight. And the final one is almost certainly to do with something to do with food or housing. It looks to be possibly a house, though more likely a barn. I'm not entirely sure though. The universe is cruel, but you are not alone. The developers have added a lot of origins since Federations, and now 3 more will be in First Contact. While Knights of the Toxic God origin may still be the most verbose origin they've ever written, I believe clocking in at around, it's either 13,000 words or 13,000 characters, I suspect 13,000 words. All three of these are now lower tech starts with strong narrative and mechanical themes. Now, I'm a little bit confused when they're saying lower tech. I think that means we might start off with not quite pre-FTL, but basically having only just discovered FTL, possibly having no science ships, possibly needing to do research on that. I'm not entirely sure. Broken Shackles is the first of these origins which we've already seen some text about, and it has this lovely image to go with it here where I believe we're seeing a whole bunch of the slaves, the freed slaves, gathering around campfires on their new planet. But this idea for Broken Shackles started back in Federations as one of the brainstorming documents. Then it was called Escaped Slaves. Originally, it was conceived of as a mechanically focused, challenging origin with some unique starting conditions, but the devs nearly put it into Overlord, and then they decided that there was much more potential to explore this with some story, and thus we're getting it in a story pack. CG English will be showing where they went with that since this period and telling us all more about this origin next week in the Dev Diary. The Payback Origin was first conceived as an origin to fulfill the trope of a plucky civilization defeating an invading alien force. The event art associated with this should be familiar if you've watched the announcement trailer. As we can see there in the background, that is the observation post of the Minimar Specialized Industries. This one is also a challenging origin, and Cheerful Goth will be telling us all about this in the coming weeks. I believe this might be in 2 weeks' time. And finally, during development, the devs thought, wouldn't it be interesting if these two origins were linked, with the same empire as their nemesis? And this then brought Minimar Specialized Industries, the galaxy's most noble megacorp, selflessly taking it upon themselves to bring countless civilizations into the space age for a very small fee. And I must admit, I find it really interesting we're going to have such a large story-based empire scripted into the game for players that take a specific origin. There might not be a massive amount of replayability to it, but it's going to be really quite interesting to have that. I would love to have more scenario-like possibilities for Stellaris with the ability to kind of replay similar galactic setups. Now, PDS Iggy will be exploring the fine line between paranoia and prudence in Fear of the Dark, which, as I mentioned before, I think might be something of a Dark Forest 3-body problem style of origin. The devs initially considered this one as a challenging origin as well, but as they added more and more to it, they decided it's different, rather than difficult specifically. For example, how do you think you would react if one day Venus simply exploded? Yes, that's right. I believe they are going to explode a planet in the solar system of this species in its backstory, and when we get to the FTL age, they are completely terrified of the big boogeyman out there in the galaxy that might come around and crack another planet. Now, all of that is partly why I believe we're going to be getting this DLC in about 4 to 5 weeks. We've got definitely 3 more future dev diaries coming out here before release, one for each of these origins, with possibly an additional dev diary after that, though maybe there could be yet more included too. But that additional dev diary, I think, would cover the new civics that we've not heard anything about in today's dev diary, as well as some other bits and pieces they have yet to illuminate. And finally, we now have some concrete information on the new cloaking technology, the new cloak ships we are going to be getting in Stellaris. Do not believe your ocular organs, ladies and gentlemen. It is hard to maintain a low profile when your observation post is clearly visible, hanging in the sky. You can try to rely on the people you're studying mistaking it for the domicile of the gods, but a more reliable solution would be to hide it from view. Enter basic cloaking fields. This technology unlocks an A and an S slot component, What on earth does that mean? Well, it looks like, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be getting cloaking fields as an auxiliary slot and as a small slot, which then I have to assume is some sort of weapon slot instead, will be used up by this cloaking field. By performing research into new areas of field manipulation, your scientists can discover methods of generating cloaking fields around observation posts and science ships. And while peaceful uses are nice and all, your admirals will salivate at the idea of a fleet of cloaked frigates sneaking up on an unsuspecting starbase. Now, what is all of this telling us? Well, first off, the fact that it is basic means we're going to be getting multiple levels of this cloaking technology, possibly doing slightly different things, or possibly further fortifying whatever bonus we get from it. Secondly, there are both civilian and military applications for this technology. Exactly what the military applications will be are still based on speculation, but I think given we have an A and an S, A slot may in fact be to do with not having your ship revealed from an intel perspective, from a sensor perspective, whereas the S slot is about reducing incoming damage or having something going on like that, equivalent to armor or shields, but it only works possibly for certain periods of time. I don't know yet. This is, of course, all still speculation. The one concrete thing we do know is that we're definitely getting cloaking technology, and we haven't got a whisper of a Treaty of Alderaan. Now, cloaking was one of the remaining major sci-fi tropes that the developers hadn't explored yet, and it did seem like a natural fit to include alongside the infiltration and observation themes of this story pack. Once the devs have managed to decrypt Alfred Strike's notes, then he'll be sharing the details on cloaking and detection. That brings me back to a previous point where now I believe we are going to be getting 4 dev diaries, then the release. That would put the release at around mid to late February. And with that, we'll have to wait until next week to get more information about this upcoming DLC, when we'll be finding out a whole lot more about the broken Shackles origin. Until that time, if you'd like to watch a Stellaris related video specifically selected for you, click the video on screen now.